Now that all the biggins have left Planet Crunge, it's time for Ratbag to take over the city of Nor with his hordes. Yeah! Now, we may only be a bunch of gits that got left behind, but we're gonna party, riot, and drink until we can't do no more. The one who owns Nor is the one who gets the most bottle caps. Now, will you join me as a git, or will you fight against me? Will you triumph? I guess we'll find out in Space Gits. I'll just crump ya.
Thank you for the introduction, Ratbag. Interesting. Anyway, we're here to talk about Space Gits today. Space Gits is a multiplayer game. It can be played with many players, and it's created by our old friend Mike Hutchinson of Gaslands fame, and of course his game company. So let's dig in, check it out, and see where we go from there. So into setting.
More Daka.
So the setting of Space Gits. So you are space orcs on the planet Plunge. And what's happened on Plunge recently is the biggest mega boss has gotten all these guys together and he's loaded them onto a fleet and he's sailed off into the universe and he's planning on conquering it. The issue is that there's now a whole bunch of gits left behind. Useless pieces of crap that weren't good enough for the fleet. And that's us! The Space Gits, in fact. So basically you're in the capital city of Nor and you're trying to be the next boss, basically. But also, your guys want to riot, party, and get drunk during this time period. And that's pretty much the story of Space Gits as it is at the moment. He's just a whole bunch of crap orcs that got left behind and other assortment of orcish races. And you're just trying to have as much fun as possible before the mega boss gets back and probably headbutts all of you into submission.
More Daka.
Okay, so the rules. So we're going to be covering the rules in this quick start guide. So the quick start guide is pretty cool. It's just quick start. Each team has 3 orcs. You can have as many people as you want in them. And we'll just go through each step. Now, there are a couple of vagaries in here that I will be correcting with the full beta rulebook that I've got access to. Do keep in mind that the beta rulebook is a bit hard to find at the moment. It's meant to end at the end of their Kickstarter, which I believe is in kind of like the final pledge stage, like as in you can pledge, but you've kind of missed out at this point. But we'll be covering the quick start guide, which anyone can get, and I'll just fix a couple of the rules that are a bit more vague. Alright, lovely assistance here today. So allow me to introduce you to the Green Grunts. I've also got the Red Rampages, and I've got the Purple Plunderers, and finally we've got the Blue Berserkers. So these guys will be helping me show off the rules and how to play. So yeah, we've just got a mini setup going on here, just to show off sort of how we'd sort of just set the table up. Do keep in mind that your table will obviously be bigger, but it honestly, this can be played on pretty much anything of a reasonable size. So, I mean, we played on a card table and it was absolutely fine. So a kitchen table will do, and of course you have it on your gaming table as well. So the setup of the game is as follows. We first start off with 7 bottle caps. These are what you collect in the game. So I just 3D printed some of these, and what you do is you keep one aside and then you just drop the rest from a reasonable height. We'll say that had a couple of, because obviously I'm trying to keep them in the play area. And then let's say this one fell over here and this one went over here, and then I put the last one right in the middle of the play area. Bang! We have now set the table up. But I know what you're thinking. Okay, so set the table up, how do we deploy it? It's pretty straightforward. Basically, we'll use a green grunt and a red rampage to show this off. And what we're going to do is, it cannot be within 4 inches of a bottle cap. So, of any bottle cap, so we'll say our green grunt goes here. And then, red rampage will place theirs. Now, they also can't play it within 4 of an enemy orc. So, for this particular one, we'll say we'll pop our red rampage over here on the other side. And that's pretty much it. We have now set the table up. The terrain is down, the orcs would be down, and obviously I put down all the orcs here, you know, like we could place another guy like here. Oh, I just realized this one there. And then we could place another green grunt over here. And then we could place another rampage over here behind this building, and we could place one, say, like here. But that would be our setup for our table, as you can see. Now, let's get into... we've started the game. How do we play?
What's
so the
the
first final step, can we start playing? No, actually, what you do is you take your phone, you set a 30-minute timer on it, and you begin the game. And then you start by activating an orc. And you basically activate an orc just by saying, I'm activating this orc. And you can activate the same orc as many times as you want in a row. Obviously, once you activate an orc, it's then an opponent's turn. And say you're playing 4 players, and then so on and so forth till it gets back to your turn. But you can activate that same orc that just got activated. You don't have to activate different orcs. But isn't that overpowered, Vamps? Well, let's get into the game and I'll let you know. There are 4 actions that your Space Git can do, but he can only do 2 of them a turn. So, these are... Scoot, which is move. The boot, which we'll get into boot. Then they can fight in close combat, and they can shoot. Now let's go through these actions one at a time. We'll start with scoot, go to shoot, talk about fighting, and then finally covering boot. Alright, so scoot's pretty straightforward. Say these are my 3 dice that I'm using for the game. So what I do is say I want to move this guy here. I roll the dice. Bang. Okay, so I didn't do too badly. So what I do is I then take my tape measure or measuring stick, and I have to move in the direction of the dice. So what I could do is I could go 5 down to this dice, which is exactly where it is. Then I could move 2 towards this dice. Now I touch a bottle cap, which means I get to take it. That's my bottle cap now. And then I can move 5 back towards this dice, for example. Now, when you move, you have to use all the dice unless you end up in a fight. So that would be that orc's turn. Now, what happens at the end of the turn? Well, here comes the special source of Space Gits. I take a dice and I put it next to my orc. And this is the dice tower. Anytime an orc takes damage or finishes his movement, he's got to place a dice next to him. And next time he moves, this dice has to stay in contact with him at all time. Yeah, so let's just say so now he's got the dice in contact with him. So anytime he moves, he now has to move with this. Now, this doesn't seem too bad at first, but imagine I've got a stack of dice, which I'll talk about how the dice functions a bit further ahead once we cover all the actions. So, anyway, that's it. That guy's done. But let's just say he wants to shoot now. Now, we'll say he's got a pistol, so he's got an 8-inch range, so he can shoot anyone in 8 inches. We'll just say for tutorial purposes, this guy's in range, and this guy's in range. So, what I do is, because I got a pistol does D6. Now, then I have to roll it at someone. So say I roll at this guy. So if we follow that line, I actually missed that dude. Right? I rolled beyond his base. But let's say I rolled here. Alright. So, an orc's toughness is 3. Which means on the dice you have to roll over a 3. I only rolled a 1. So that means I do small damage, which is 1 point of damage with this guy. So let's just say I rolled a 4 on this guy. That would beat his toughness and he'd take big damage. Now, he's behind cover, so that would actually make his toughness 4, but if you meet or beat toughness, it still works. So anything that kind of blocks line of sight, you know. But let's just say this guy over here was in range. Well, this guy can't see him, so he can't shoot him at all. It just hits the wall. Now, shooting can also be a bit of a dangerous prospect, because say I've got my friendly orc over here, right? Next to this guy, and then I roll my dice. Oh, we'll say it went there. Oops, it's behind my orc. Well, I just shot my own orc, and then it beats his toughness, so he'd be the one to get the double dice stack. So that's pretty much how shooting works. Now, there is another weapon in here called a blaster, and it's a D8 worth of damage. Also, if you beat their toughness, you deal 3 points of damage. But of course, with a D8, it's a bit more difficult to roll. So you will need different types of dice depending on what you're playing. But generally, those different types of dice, you're only going to need 1 or 2 of. So if you play D&D, you're good. Then finally, we have fight. Let's say I've got this guy and I managed to move into close combat. So fighting is rock, paper, scissors based. So we've got thump, which means you just punch the enemy orc. You roll a d6 as though you were shooting, but you don't need to worry about accuracy. And if you beat their toughness, you deal big damage. If you don't, you deal small damage. Which all orcs are armed with a headbutt. Particularly if you have a blaster, small damage is 0, so you do want to get the big damage on that one. But orcs with pistols all have close combat weapons, so they always deal at least 1 point of damage with thump. Now, of course, thump beats pinch. Pinch is the next one, so you can also just do scissors because it's the same thing. So what happens is when you pinch, you steal a bottle cap off the opponent. So let's just say someone pinches my coin. Well, there you go. It's their coin now. It's their bottle cap. So yeah, so pinch. Yep. Pinch, of course, beats shove. What does shove do? Shove shoves the orc 3 inches away from you and ends combat. Combat doesn't end until someone shoved the other one or someone's unconscious.
Fight!
Now I know what you're thinking, because in the rules it doesn't really specify what happens if you draw, like in rock, paper, scissors. Like what if you both thump, or you both shove, or you both pinch? Well, guess what? It's not like that in this one. If you both thump, both orcs thump each other. If you both shove, both orcs shove each other 3 inches away from each other. If you pinch, both orcs pinch a bottle cap off each other, which is kind of a bit of a moot point at this point. So, yeah, that's fighting, pretty much. Now, let's get into boot, even though I think it's time we talk about the dice tower. As I've previously said, we have a dice tower that we have to move around with. Why am I talking about this before boot? Because boot is directly correlated to the dice tower. This guy over here has taken a goddamn beating. He's been shot by a blaster, and then he's just been in close combat with this orc and shoved it away. And now he has 5 dice of damage on him. This doesn't look overly good for our guy. And you're like, well, I want to get him out of there. So you, of course, roll your dice and you go to move him away. But, oh no! The dice tower fell. What happens? Well, your orc falls over and you remove all the dice. He got too drunk, basically. He's drunk too much booze, and now he is unconscious. So, what, is that it? The guy's out of the game? No. Luckily for you, you can come up with your own orc, and you can boot him up the arse. So a friendly orc comes up, boots up the arse, and this guy stands back up. So, and then he's fine. But there is a small problem. Let's just say that Red has 2 bottle caps from over here. This guy is short. He doesn't move quite far enough. Then it becomes my turn. And then I move this guy back in. We'll say he only has 1 dice, but you know, it doesn't really matter. And he decides to put the boot in on your guy instead. Well, guess what? I steal one of your bottle caps. No, nothing. Just straight away, bottle cap stolen. I put the boot in, you give me a bottle cap. And that's basically how booting works. Now, the other thing you might be thinking of, well, Vamps, let's just say we go back to this particular scenario where this guy, this Red Rampage guy, has a huge amount of dice. Right? We'll just say 4. So he's got 4 this time. And then my opponent rocks the table. Oh, what happens then? Haha. So see, this isn't really talked about in the Quick Start Guide, but it is addressed in the beta rulebook. So In the quick start guide, it just says if a tower falls over for any reason, that orc falls down. But in the beta rules, what happens is if your opponent fat fingers something and knocks one of your dice towers over, guess what? The orc sobers up. You take all the dice, you remove them, and that orc is now sober on the table. And of course, let's just say that his orc over here that fell over had a stack of like 6 dice and it falls over. Well, that guy still goes down, but your guy does not. So how does the game end? This is a fair question. I'm going to get a couple more little friends to help me explain this, I think. We've got our friends, the blue berserkers, who have got 4 bottle caps, and we've got our purple plunderers, who have 3 bottle caps. So, what happens at the end of the game? Well, the alarm goes off. Beep, 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 beep. And now you can't boot anymore. Now, we'll say one of our friends, one of the blue guys, is down. So, what does this mean? Well, he can no longer be revived, and coins can no longer be stolen off him. And you also gain access to a new action called Legate. Now, Legate's pretty straightforward. You activate the orc, and as long as he's not within 6 inches of an enemy, he leaves. So this guy leaves. And now that guy's safe, he's done. But this guy is within 6. So what happens if I try and leave then? Oh well, you drop a coin. You drop one of your bottle caps, you leave it behind. This is another one of the vagaries in the rule. It just says they drop a bottle cap, but it specifically says in the beta rules you drop it from your stash. So you drop a coin. You drop a bottle cap. They don't drop a fresh one, you just drop one of yours. Which means now suddenly, our purple plunderer friends are now in range of actually being able to win this. Because of this. The problem is that this guy is probably going to give up the ghost here. He's already down. What can you do? Well, you can't boot him back up. The only option is to try and take these 2 guys out and hopefully not have that guy left. But we'll say in one of his activations to remove him from the board. We'll say our purple friend moved here last turn. Alright, so now it's purple guy's turn, and he can do whatever he wants. And then it's blue's turn, and the only thing he can do is leg it with this guy. It's the only thing he's got left, which means he must drop a bottle cap. Now what happens? Well, the purple plunderer boss is the only one left on the table. All his orcs are still here, all his gits are here. So what happens? He gets any remaining bottle caps and they go straight into his stockpile. And purple wins this game because of the additional bottle cap they just stole off of blue. We're getting into gameplay now, and we'll talk about a couple little things that I had some issues with, but you know, we'll talk about things that I didn't have issues with either.
More Daka!
SPACE GITS gameplay. What's it like? Well, it's fun. I mean, I've never really played a game where you have to be accurate with your dice rolls. I'm not talking about rolling 5s and 6s. I'm talking about legitimately being accurate where your dice are going. Because, you know, you can knock over your own towers, which is bad because your guys go down, or you can knock over your enemy towers and they just stop being drunk. You can also obviously move in directions you don't want to move, or your gun shoots and completely misses. You're trying to roll a d8 accurately. Oh boy, is that a rough little thing. But it is fun. I like how straightforward it is. The games are pretty short, you know, 30-40 minutes roughly. Pretty much once you get down to 30 minutes, it very rapidly sort of like hits the end game very fast. I like the fact that you can activate the same orc over and over again, but there is a penalty of he gets a bigger and bigger tower. And once you get to about 6-7 dice, it's pretty much that guy is going down at some point. It's just whether or not you want him to go down sooner rather than later. Obviously, being able to go, oh, there's only like 3 minutes left in the game, so I'll knock him down now, bring an orc over and kick his ass. You know, that's a good thing. And yeah, obviously, even when the alarm goes off, instantly legging it is not always a great move to do. So now that we've gotten the fun stuff out of the way, where I think that, you know, the dexterity-based stuff is great, I think the gameplay is fun, let's talk about some of the vagaries. So the problem I have with the Quick Start rulebook is there are several things that are vague. Which is what happens when you both shoot the same rock, paper, scissors. What happens if you knock the dice tower down? You know, things like that I covered in the video, which are covered in the beta rulebook, which is great, but right now not everyone has access to the beta rulebook. I mean, you can probably get it unscrupulously, but you can't get it legitimately at the moment. I do have a copy, as I've said, and the rules do cover a lot more stuff, how to build custom armies and all that kind of stuff. Still, even with custom armies, you're looking at maybe like 5 orcs, so you don't need to go too crazy. And obviously you can get like biggins, goblins, you know, you can get attack dogs, stuff like that. So they do cover it. You can even get like, you know, goblin dreadnoughts, basically. And the other thing is that I feel like why I do like the time mechanic at the end of the game, the problem is that if you are desperate, you're going to try and go in close combat with people, and you're going to try and use pinch, right? Pinch makes sense, which means at the end of the game, the other person is just going to thump. Right, particularly if they've got a caps lead. Say they got 6 of the 7 caps, you've got 1, you know you need to go pinching, they're gonna just thump you. And if you knock them down, oh well, you know, as long as 1 orc gets away for them, they win, basically. Because you can't boot anymore, so you can't boot into the opponent. I understand that, I get that, you know, but it's just that there's no real super big comeback mechanic. It's either the game is close at the end of the game and they need to be careful with how they maneuver people, or it's too far apart for you to be able to actually manage to claw your way back. Because really, if the winning boss has, say, 5 or 6 caps, and they go, oh well, I'm gonna be losing a cap because one of my guys is down, they're gonna just go and try and like take your dudes out, and they've got the room to maneuver that, particularly if it's a multiplayer game. You know, if it's 4 or 5 people playing, you know, they're all vying for control. If you've got 5 caps out of the 7, you might be able to sacrifice 2 caps and still end up coming out at very minimum a draw, possibly even a win still at 3 caps. So yeah, I just think that that they need to sort of like they need to enable people to be able to steal bottle caps without having to rely on pinch. I think maybe if they did something like one more boot, just boot in, like you can boot in 1 opponent during time gentlemen, that could do it. I don't know, I'm not a game designer personally, I'm not sure how they'd balance that, but I just feel like there might be some hard feelings if you end up getting into the position where you legitimately cannot win. You can't pinch because they'll just thump you constantly. And if you try and do a thumping competition, that's fine. They're fine to go 1 for 1 at that point, right? So yeah, that's pretty much. And of course, you don't drop bottle caps if the person's down. If they're orcs down and you're within 6 of them, you still just escape. So if you end up getting into a competition where you're just thumping the crap out of each other and you're going down, they're going down, yeah. But let's end on a positive note. Space Gits is super fun. It is a really fun, short little game that's very easy to learn. I think the dexterity thing is great. The only downside for me on the dexterity part is that my partner, she has a bit of difficulty with her hands, so obviously she has a bit of a rough time trying to sort of carefully balance dice towers. But overall, I just think it's a very fun and enjoyable game. If you don't have any dexterity issues, you're good to go. Who knows, maybe if you do, you can enjoy playing Space Gits anyway.
Blast ya with so much dakka, there'll be none of you left.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, guys. I do really appreciate it. I think that's about it for Space Gits. I do recommend checking it out if you've got time. It is a very fun game. If you enjoyed this content, please drop a like or a subscribe or both. It just helps me figure out that I'm doing good stuff on the channel, you know. Obviously, there's always going to be popular and unpopular videos on the channel, but letting me know with a like and a sub that I'm doing a good job lets me know that I'm moving in the right direction. So, thanks again. You have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next one. See yous.